2020 has been nothing short of an interesting year. This is certainly going to be a time that we remember for the rest of our lives, and with a lot of industries, they kind of halted or slowed down. Video games, though, thrived and brought so much joy throughout this entire year as people escaped their lives and engrossed themselves into wonderful new worlds. Really, I have to applaud the game industry for all that they've achieved, and today we're going to celebrate the top 15 best games of 2020. Now, this is only my opinion, and that's important to keep in mind. So if I do miss one of your favorite games, let me know in the comments below. As for this list, we do have 15 really good games for you to check out that released in 2020. Now, don't focus on the order too much, as each and every one of these games are somebody's favorite because every single one of these are great in their own way. Again, this is just my own personal list, but other than that, let's get right into it. And to start off the list, I have Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Valhalla takes what Origins and Odyssey did with their open-world RPG mechanics and just runs with it. It's a little more of a tight and focused experience than past entries, which I found to be much more enjoyable. Something that really stands out, however, is the brutality of its combat. You do play as a Viking, so that does make sense, but it does give the combat more impact. It also throws in some nice stealth mechanics as well, harping back to the classic Assassin's Creed games, so you get the best of both worlds. The story itself is also solid with some meaningful decisions, and if you like exploration, you're not going to find a much better looking world than Valhalla. It's truly gorgeous at times, especially on next generation consoles. 13 Sentinels is a game that's wildly going under the radar right now. It's a little more niche than most of the games on this list with its anime art style and tactical based gameplay, but it's one that you absolutely should not ignore, especially if you like good stories. 13 Sentinels debatably has the best story of not just 2020, but in recent memory as a whole. It really is exceptional with great writing that will have you hooked from beginning to end. It, however, is split between an amazing story and its tactical-based combat. The combat itself is good with plenty of depth, but the story itself is the main attraction, and for that reason alone, 13 Sentinels is one of the best games of 2020. Cyberpunk 2077 is an interesting game. Cyberpunk is by far one of the most hyped up games that I've ever seen, as it's CD Projekt Red's next big game. They of course developed The Witcher, which is an all-time great, so as you'd expect, Cyberpunk 2077 is another very good game thanks to its immersive futuristic world, interesting story, and fun first-person gameplay mechanics. Really, the only reason this isn't higher on the list is because currently in 2020, it has several bugs that keeps it from reaching its full potential. What I can say though is that playing Cyberpunk on the Xbox Series X does feel great, but on last generation consoles, there has been several reports of poor performance and major bugs. So from person to person, their experience can be vastly different. But with that said, CD Projekt Red does plan to release several big patches in the near future. I think in the long run, Cyberpunk will end up fixing its issues, and don't let the launch problems fool you. This is a great game, and I think that will be rather obvious in the long run. Flight Simulator is one of those games that doesn't get talked about nearly as much as it deserves. This is an insanely impressive simulator to the point it basically looks photorealistic at times. I mean, if you have a nice flight stick and know what you're doing, you can maybe learn to fly an airplane as you travel the world to real-life locations and airports. Yes, it's a little more niche, but if you're into airplanes or just want to travel, Flight Simulator is great at what it does. Also, this game is only getting better and better as time goes on, as they continue to update it with new locations and support on things like VR and soon, Xbox consoles. The Last of Us Part 2 has been dominated by controversy since it first released. This is for several different reasons, some valid while others not so much. What I will say though is that The Last of Us Part 2 technically is an extremely impressive game. The animations and attention to detail are among the best in the entire industry. Naughty Dog has also clearly put a lot of time into making the combat feel brutal and intimate. It's about as realistic I've seen a game feel, and that can both be jaw-dropping and disturbing at the same time. At the end of the day though, a lot of your enjoyment is going to be dictated by how this game makes you feel through its story and its characters. And that's where a lot of controversy comes from. There is a character that does something very early in the game that some fans just cannot forgive, and because you have to play as this character afterwards, this has brought up a heavy debate on how players feel about The Last of Us Part 2. Again, it's a very impressive game for many reasons, but your enjoyment may not be linked to just how impressive it is. Yakuza Like a Dragon is a new chapter in the Yakuza franchise focusing on an entirely new protagonist. This may be concerning to some longtime fans, but don't worry because once again, we get yet another exceptional experience. It is a little different than past entries, not only because of its new characters, but it's also more experimental by using turn-based combat similar to classic JRPGs. Past entries always had this wacky beat-em-up style combat, but even then, I like its new turn-based combat. It seems like an odd pairing, but it feels really good. As you'd expect though, the story once again is gripping with its twists and turns. There's nothing quite like Yakuza's crime dramas, and Like a Dragon is worthy of the Yakuza name. Crash Bandicoot is back and has finally gotten a true sequel similar to the original trilogy with Crash 4. I mean, Crash 3 released way back in 1998, and here we are 22 years later, and the formula that Naughty Dog built up all those years ago feels just as good as it ever did. The new studio Toys with Bob didn't just make a carbon copy though. They actually improved on the original formula by adding in new abilities, by finding new masks, and by allowing you to play as different characters such as Tana and Dingo Doll. By doing this, the gameplay is constantly changing and gives you new challenges. They may have you run across walls, or they might have you slow down time, but they really do offer a challenge. That word is no accident either. This is a very difficult game, especially if you're trying to collect everything, and there is a lot of content if you really do want to complete everything. I can definitely say Crash 4 is one of my favorite platformers made from the last decade, and if you like the old Crash games, do yourself a favor and check this game out. It's no secret that Animal Crossing New Horizons has just absolutely blown up in terms of popularity in the year of 2020. The release of this game could not have been any more perfect in terms of timing. For a lot of people this year, it's been stressful. And with Animal Crossing, you can escape to paradise. It's just a relaxing experience in life sim. You have all of these adorable characters as you build a community. It's kind of hard to put into words why this game is so good and refreshing, but don't be surprised if you pick this game up and end up putting hundreds of hours into it. It's one of those games that begs to be played daily, even if you have other games to play as well. You just continue to go back to its wonderful world time and time again. Doom Eternal is probably the complete opposite of Animal Crossing. This is a game all about killing demons and as many as you possibly can. There's nothing peaceful about it per se, but there is extreme fun, and that's what games are all about. Doom Eternal brings back Doomslayer as he thirsts for demon blood. He's just as mobile as ever, and there are some really fun and rewarding weapons in this game that makes it feel better than the competition within the same genre. Don't look at this game as just mindless shooting though. There is a strategy to this game, and that's one reason I think Doom Eternal has become an all-time great first-person shooter. It's a mix of its fun gameplay mechanics, interesting weapons, and smart and satisfying challenges. Demon's Souls is probably my favorite game of 2020, and I enjoyed this game so much that I got the Platinum Trophy. I rarely do that in any game, but that's how much I like Demon's Souls. With that said, the only reason I didn't rank it higher is because it is a remake that doesn't really add much from the 2009 version. However, there are plenty of quality of life changes, the visuals are absolutely stunning, and the gameplay is what you'd expect from the Souls franchise. It's challenging and meticulous. The boss designs as well are again among the best in the industry. In terms of the Souls franchise, this one always stood out to me. I've always liked the monuments and how you get to travel level to level, but I have to say, this remake has me wanting the entire Dark Souls trilogy to get worthy remakes, and not just simple remasters. I think this game has proven more than ever before that the gameplay in these games are timeless. Ghost of Tsushima was a big surprise to me in just how good it is. It's easy to look at this game and be mesmerized by its visuals, but I'm telling you, if you play this game on a good TV, it's mind-blowing. The world itself is jaw-dropping at times, and especially if you play it on the PlayStation 5, which allows you to play it on graphics mode at 60 frames per second. This game essentially is a PlayStation 5 game thanks to boost mode. It also has an interesting story about a samurai. I don't say this about a lot of games, but it's atmospheric, and actually it feels like you're playing in Japan. The combat is also intriguing. There's some RPG mechanics to it where you can upgrade abilities, and you can learn some new combat and evasive maneuvers as you play more. You're going to want to approach each situation carefully though, especially on harder difficulties. At times, stealth might be your best approach, while others, you're going to need to attack straight on by parrying and dodging blows. I actually think Ghost of Tsushima is the complete package, and Sucker Punch outdid themselves with this new IP. It's easy to look at Final Fantasy VII Remake and say it's just a remake, but it's not. I actually believe this is a sequel in disguise, and I'm not going to go into all of that because of spoilers, but I will say that I think that there is a possibility that this game is set after the events of Final Fantasy VII. Regardless of when it's set though, they added a ton of content to this game. Sure, it's just the first part, but they really fleshed out the characters, which is no easy thing to do. I mean, these are some of the most beloved characters of all time, and somehow Square Enix made every single character better. And not just main characters either, but side characters as well. And then there's the gameplay, which I thought was brilliant. They managed to mix in that turn-based feel by pausing the game and choosing attacks, with action-based combat. That was a great touch, and it feels fantastic. If anything, Part 1 has me more excited than ever to see what happens in Part 2. Yes, Half-Life is finally back after fans have been asking for Half-Life 3 for longer than a decade. Well, Valve technically still can't count to 3, but we did get Half-Life Alyx, and while I'm sure there were a lot of disappointed fans that this is a VR game, it however was amazing, and VR really added to the overall experience. After playing it myself, I can't imagine it without VR. There's always been that debate on whether or not VR can produce big AAA games, and not only did Alyx do that, but it is one of the best games of 2020. Looking back at this year, it's one that really sticks with me. The story itself is good, but it's the gameplay and its immersive world that stands out so much. The combat feels great as you shoot and reload, and then there's also some form of stealth. This is actually a scary game at times, though I won't say as to exactly why, but I will say if you have a PC VR headset, this is a must-buy. If you don't have a PC VR headset though, and you have a capable computer, this is a good reason to own one. I don't usually care for roguelike games where if you die, you start the game from the beginning. Hades though is a truly special game. While yes, if you die, just like any other roguelike, you must start anew, but however, Supergiant Games didn't make death feel draining. Instead, it's sort of rewarding, and that's something you don't usually expect to say. See, the entire premise is that Zagreus, the son of Hades, is looking to escape home by climbing his way out of the underworld. This means that he'll battle countless demons, and if he dies, he must return home. This is where things get interesting though. With each death, you can keep different currencies that you find in order to upgrade Zagreus, his abilities, and unlock new weapons. Not only that, but death is intertwined with a colorful cast of characters and story. With each failure, various characters will react differently, either helping you in your journey, or to simply mock you. It feels like a real breathing world, as they do react to the actions you've made within that world. And then there's the addictive combat as you make your climb. Not only are there several different weapons to play around with, but you're always building your character as you climb. This is done in the aid of different gods and abilities that they grant. More or less, you choose a new path with every single attempt. It's an interesting gameplay mechanic, and it creates a ton of replayability. And Hades is not just a great game, but it's a one-of-a-kind that will last for years to come. So the number 1 and 2 spot was extremely close, but ultimately, I ended up choosing Ori and the Will of the Wisps. This is a true AAA 2D Metroidvania game. There have been plenty of great Metroidvania games over the years, but Ori is debatably the best of all time. The world is absolutely stunning, it has an emotional and engaging story, and the gameplay is both unique and exceptional. See, unlike other games within this genre, Ori really focuses on platforming, and it's so good that it can easily go toe-to-toe with games like Rayman and Mario. It's also very challenging, reaching its climax during escape sequences against bosses. Then there's the combat, and that's the thing. While the platforming is great, so is the combat, which has drastically improved from Ori and the Blind Forest. So from top to bottom, Ori and the Will of the Wisps is a true masterpiece, and a game that I would highly recommend. Anyways, that's it for this list, but if I didn't mention one of your favorite games, let me know in the comments below. With that said, if you liked the video, don't forget the bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.